Before I move on to the next film on this top 10 list though, I do just want to note Kim Ki-Duk's use of the time loop device in the movie Time. Do you see what he did there? With the woman bumping into herself both at the beginning and at the end, not because it's especially important to the story or to the broader meaning of that one film in particular, but because with the protagonist also having met herself in Bad Guy, as well as the use of PTSD hallucinations in The Coast Guard, one thing which I feel compelled to explain further before I continue with this series is that in most of Kim Ki-Duk's movies, reality is much deeper than what we see. That in at least 2 of the films that I will list in the top 5, the question of what is real and what is a dream is the entire Badger snowboarding point. And on top of this, even when we are certain of what is real and what is not, even if it's only in our own minds, many of the characters in Kim Ki-Duk's movies are not actually people, but rather personifications of concepts, ideals, emotions, perceptions, and beliefs which are incredibly difficult to define in words. Not merely archetypal or one-dimensional characters such as the ones that clog up Hollywood films like Mildew exist solely to move the plot forward or to support the main character's narrative arc and may as well wear signs saying I'm the love interest, I'll be murdered in order to incite the hero's quest for revenge or what have you, but instead are essentially a projection of the subconscious needs, desires, fears and so forth of the human characters in the film, for lack of a better term, giving us a grounding through which to explore the issues at hand. Remember what I mentioned in a previous video in this series about the Buddhist influences which form the basis of so much of Kim Ki-Duk's work? Well, this is a large part of what I was talking about, not forgetting that a great many of his films are dripping with Christian imagery, symbolism and belief as well. And to be blunt, my friends, while this also applies to many of the characters in Kim Ki-Duk's other movies, including some of those which I have previously listed, if you perceive every single one of the characters in the rest of the films which I will list in this top 10 as being entirely human and thus attempt to understand their motivations and behaviour in terms of what real people or fictional characters in Hollywood films would do, for example, then you will feel incredibly confused and frustrated, see multiple plot holes, and concoct and believe bullshit fan theories about one character having died in prison and become a ghost in order to try and twist the film to fit quote-unquote Western storytelling logic. That instead, like the distinction between most English language poetry, for example, and Japanese haiku, one is largely focused on telling a story, on making a point, on communicating precisely what it was that the poet intended to convey, while the other is focused on bringing memories, thoughts, and emotions to the surface, on leading us to meditate, to ponder and to question, and upon inspiring new ideas and beliefs. That in short, while most mainstream cinema, in inverted commas, expects or even encourages us to switch off our brains and allow ourselves to be spoon-fed whatever story and point the studio wishes to tell and make, as I mentioned in my video discussing Bad Guy, we must actively engage with the kind of movie that Kim Ki-Duk creates, feeling much more than we perceive, because we understand that at least part of what we perceive is an allegory, a metaphor, a manifestation of the spiritual or the religious, a hallucination, or even simply a dream.